The Jimbo Fisher Radio Show is brought to you by Capital Farm Credit, the largest agricultural lender in Texas. Capital Farm Credit, together, we're better. We are at Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue, 504 Harvey Road in College Station, with the head coach of the Fighting Texas Aggies, Jimbo Fisher. And, Coach, coming off Saturday's game against Appalachian State, I asked you after Sam Houston. I'll ask you the same question after App State. What jumped out at you after you watched the tape of that game?
Well, that, your practice habits and what you would take to the field, and you can't have critical mistakes in the fundamental, and like I always say, ordinary things. And that's where we were. We didn't do ordinary things on offense. Defense, we did some really nice things, played well in a point situation, played physical for the most part. They were physical in the game, and I think if we could have scored some points and got them out of that, I think it would have helped us drastically. But at the same time, we only give up 17 points, which is tremendous. But they had some long drives, had 4 drives of 10 plays or more, and ate some clock and some third downs we got to get cleaned up. And then we weren't able to create a turnover. They took care of it, didn't have to take a lot of risks and that. But at the same time, defense did a solid job in the game, a really good job, and a couple of things we got to get cleaned up. But then we'll get better offensively. Not sustain anything. No consistency, and it was things that were there. Things that were fundamentally sound things, and whether it was a missed assignment, a misstep, a hand placement, a read, a throw, and everybody took turns. And it was a very different game, and you only had 8 possessions. Yeah, you had limited possessions, and what you did, and you had to maximize them, and we didn't do that. Special teams, I thought, was really good on the day, except for we didn't get the field goal. We had a chance to tie it up with a field goal still at the end. We missed that, which is critical. We had a great Shane had a tremendous punt return. A kickoff return. We blocked that thing really well. A lot of great effort. And I say this: there was effort on the film. Our deficiencies were not in effort. We're not playing tough. We just didn't play fundamentally sound in some things, especially on the offensive side of the football. And we got to do that better. And then we got to hit that field goal to tie it up and get it there. But we had chances to make plays and didn't. And it was very disappointing. And like I said, we got to play better, but we also got to coach better. We got to make sure we're getting those guys fundamentally sound and doing those things, which we have to do. But now we got to put that one away and get ready for. Can't let one become 2, and you got to push forward and get ready for a very good Miami team coming in.
So how was practice Monday, yesterday, and today?
Monday was good. Tuesday was really, really good. Today was really good. I thought our guys jumped out from an energy standpoint. I thought from an execution standpoint, competing against each other, and we did good on good. Scout team, had one little lull on offense. They got on, and they jumped right back on it, and I thought finished really strong, had good enthusiasm for the day, had good focus. Defensively, they felt they had a really good day there, too. And when I could see the parts when I was watching on defense, they looked really good. And the special teams, we were very solid today. So the guys have bounced back from an energy standpoint and are eager to go play.
I thought there was some spirit in that first good on good.
There was. It really was. You were there. You saw it. Them guys getting after it. Now, yesterday was they really got after each other. And today we were too. So that's good. And so hope we can carry that over to Saturday.
That's what Tuesday and Wednesday is over a practice week, correct?
Yes,
you get
it
that
is.
opportunity
The physicality and the days you have to do, and you got to clean things up on Thursday. But you got to those habits, and you got to create. And that's where you can get better. You're good on good and your scout work, and you can get better on Monday and Thursday too. So that's why we try to stay in pads and shells as much as we possibly can. And but from a practice standpoint, we were, I thought we practiced much better, but it had a lot more and urgency.
I loved something that DJ Durkin said, defensive coordinator. The defense, as they're going up against the scout team, forced a turnover. He said, we celebrate all turnovers. Got to celebrate as a group. And he said, let's have fun out there. We sometimes forget that, don't we?
Yeah, you do. And you have fun when you're making plays and playing. You lose yourself. The harder you play, the more fun you have. I know that sounds crazy. You think, well, the more strain I have. But the harder you play, then the more success you play, then you have more fun. And that's what that's about.
Fair to say Saturday's disappointing, but not discouraging.
Well, yeah, it is very disappointing, and there's nobody more disappointed than I am, and we are as coaching staff and the things we have to do. But at the same point, not discouraged at all. We just got to clean those things up and get fundamentally better at what we're doing and play every play. Create the process and do a better job of the process.
And again, a step up, and we'll get into Miami a little bit more later on, but that step up, it almost feels like the precursor to the conference, taking on Miami on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, Miami's a great team. I'm one of the top teams in the country, and and we have a tremendous schedule. We're going to play a lot of those guys, so this is going to be just like in a big-time SEC game, one of the best teams in the country. We need to play.
And we'll talk about South Florida a little bit, which you are very familiar with. That's for sure, as well as playing Miami every year. Right?
Yeah.
We'll talk about
for a long time.
Coming up in this hour of the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show. It's presented by Capital Farm Credit. We'll step aside. We will take a break. Come on back to Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue. It's the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show, presented by Capital Farm Credit. And this is Aggie football from Learfield. Barker's Heating and Cooling, proud to be the official heating and cooling provider for Aggie Athletics, earning your seal of approval since 1979. A lot has changed since then, but our pride in Aggie football and our commitment to providing great service remains as strong as ever. Barker says, "Gig 'em, Aggies." On Saturday at Kyle Field, 8 o'clock will be the kick between Texas A&M, ranked number 22, and Miami, 2-0, ranked number 13th, are the Hurricanes. More on the Hurricanes a little bit later on in this hour. Questions for you, Coach. I'm going early on this one. How do you want the team to respond Saturday night, and how do you put App State behind you?
Well,
Ask Steve.
You have to. That's part of this business. And I say that whether you have a great game on Saturday or not the results you want on Saturday, you have to live week to week because, people say, how do you get your team back? And sometimes it's just as hard when you have a great win sometimes to get your team back in perspective too. Because, they live on the high or they live on the low. You got to live on a daily basis, and that's the part of this world that you have to comprehend and understand. You explain to them what it is. You can't let one become two. Like one problem becomes two, and you just got to compartmentalize it and get your habits and understand why you didn't have success. Fix them the best you can and do everything you can do to get ready to play and go play again. And I know that sounds very simple, but that's what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's a mindset and a temperament. And it's, you can't go out there and make up. You got to go out there and do what I can do. People say, you lose yourself in doing ordinary things. And that's what that game is. And I tell everybody, if you do average all the time, the subtotal of that is great. People don't understand that. And the greatness, we want to make these magnificent plays, and they come within the ordinary things. The magnificent comes with the simple. And that's what you have to understand how to do and stack those plays together. Then you have drives, then all of a sudden you have 4 drives, you have 5 drives, you have 6 drives, and all of a sudden that is great. And that's what you got to understand. And it's nothing you got to do more. It's just what you got to do that's your job each and every time you do it.
You've always talked about winning your space, right? That's
exactly. Winning your space, winning the play, then go to the next one. That one's over, win the next one. You got to win more than they do, and you got to stack them on top of each other and do it. Don't worry about the scoreboard. The scoreboard will say what you want to say if you stack those plays together. And that's doing ordinary things, fundamental things, physical things, tough things, mental, all those things, each and every play.
In 2 weeks, you've gone from a shutout, and it's the greatest defense ever, to a loss where the season's over. How do you shut out the noise?
You always got to shut out the noise. You never listen to the noise. Kids today maybe do it more. I don't live in the noise, and I don't mean that in any disrespect to anybody in one shape. I listen. There's nobody that's either gets higher or lower than I do with what goes on. But you always got to be straight there, and that's just part of this business you learn after time. And those kids can do that and explain it to them and go about your business each and every day. It's
one of the changes you've seen as a coach, haven't you, with more social media since it's come in?
Well, because it's accessible to the kids. They can see it so much more, and that's part of it. And their identities, I'm saying this generation is locked up in social media. A lot of it, and that's the thing about it. So, it's a great thing. It's like everything. Your strength is your weakness. Your weakness is your strength. It can be as detrimental as it is helpful in things, and so you just got to put things in perspective.
I asked you about Monday's practice, Tuesday's practice, today's practice, but Sunday was a key day, was it not, with your Unity Council and your leaders?
Well, yeah. And getting those guys to understand it, and again, understand what you did, and understand how it is, make the mistakes, and then flush it and move on. You don't flush it and forget it. You never forget anything. Everything you do is a learning tool. It's a lesson. It's a history. History is your greatest teacher, and you learn from that, whether it's success or failure. It's like plays. Each play, tell them every play. The next most important one's the next one. What happened on the last one? If it was good, process it, move on. If it was bad, process it, move on. Same thing with games and weeks.
So after Saturday, the next play becomes the first rep for practice, correct?
Exactly
on Monday?
Right. Exactly does. After you've understood what you've done wrong and what you've done right, so you can replicate one and fix the other.
You touched on Monday, Anais and Damani and Layden Robinson were the student athletes to represent the team Monday, and then you came on. And Anais and Damani had brought up the buy-in. And I think some people were saying, players aren't bought in. The way you describe being bought in is different.
You're bought into everything you're doing, but you got to understand buy-in at this level is every play of every practice is perfect. Is the mind, and it's the strive for perfection. You know what I'm saying? You can't take it off. And people don't understand. No, they're not bought in against what we do, how we do it, the way we do it. It's that you got to understand how hard it is to strain in practice when you're running 160 plays per practice and not 70 in a game. You know what I mean? You're almost double. And that you have to do it every play, and then you go, and whether it's special teams, whether it's offense, what your role is, how it goes. That is what the buy-in is that you understand how to practice to take those habits to the field. It's not that you don't believe in what we're doing or how we're doing it or anything of that nature. And that's term. And the buy-in means that every second, that you're 5 minutes early for every meeting, that you're not 2 minutes early for every meeting, that you're taking notes in every meeting you're sitting in. You have a stack full of notes. You don't miss anything. You don't miss anything the coach says. You don't miss anything from your practice habits. You don't miss on the practice field. That everything you do has to be bought into at the highest level. You can't just, and I call it go through them. And people do it all the time. And everything you do, you listen, but you don't listen. You know what I'm saying? And you do the rep, but you're doing the rep, and sometimes you do it right. You don't even realize you do it right. You know what I'm saying? Which is a good thing at a point, but you got to focus that mind to develop your mind the same way.
I said this to you today. It's a hard lesson to learn. You've got to suffer the loss by not doing that, right? That's a hard way to do it.
It is, and you can do it if wins too. Sometimes if you're smart enough, when you pull them out and then you figure out that I got by with one and do it. But you don't have to have the losses, and that's the thing you wish you can get through. And you got to learn to tough those things out. You got to learn to grit those things out. You got to learn to fight those things out. And there's teams on Saturday that we didn't make one play. We had one more play to make. We could have made one more play, you win the game. And there's other teams who made that one play and got out there, and we'll see how they learn. And sometimes that can be just as detrimental. You figure, well, I got by that time, I'll get by again. I've been through that part of it too. I'm talking about in my coaching career. You go through all those ups and downs and just getting kids to understand how everything has to be that one way.
You can't accelerate experience, can you?
No, that's one thing you can't. But I never saw, like I tell them, and they all want to play early now, which is great. And I tell them in the rule book, I don't see an age limit. But I don't see an age limit for experience either. You can focus yourself and be mature above your years in what you do, which in times happens. But for the most part, that doesn't happen. But that's not an excuse. That's what's there.
More of the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show. It is presented by Capital Farm Credit. We are at Rudy's, 504 Harvey Road here in College Station. Stay with us. This is Aggie Football from Learfield. Rudy's is a proud sponsor of Aggie Football. Be sure to stop by your local Rudy's or Rudy's.com for some real Texas barbecue. Enjoy 100% oak smoked meats, delicious sides, and Rudy's signature sauce. Don't forget, Rudy's serves breakfast tacos every day until 10 a.m. We are at Rudy's, 504 Harvey Road here in College Station, and we always like to get the check-ins, right, from our Facebook page. Effie has checked in from Australia. Very special and we talked last week, and it's also going to be on this edition of The Pulse, but Effie and Jim here to see Nick for the first time.
Wow.
2 weeks, I should say, but the first time they've been able to watch Nick play in person here at Texas A&M.
That's awesome. Well, they've got a great son, like I say, and that's a great reward, the things he's accomplishing, and that's a great family.
Michael's also in Melbourne, and he wants to know about Nick's progression.
Oh, it's progressing very well. He gets better and better every day, and like I said, he's as harder working guys we have on our football team.
Olga has also checked in from Australia. Olga, thank you. And wow. Sarah has checked in. She says, lots of love and power from Sweden.
Wow.
Sarah Mellon.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, and Theo's he's going to be a heck of a player, too. Her son is, too.
There are so many times when I watch, whether it's a drill, he's with the scout team, or whatever, catch after catch, and that positivity that radiates from him. And that's a big boy as well.
He is athletic, big. He's got all the tools, and we're figuring this thing out and doing it the right way, he's going to be a heck of a player.
I was going to ask you about recruiting South Florida because you always have, but I'm reminded that you've always made this an international game as well.
Yeah, it's a little bit everywhere. You got to go everywhere to get them and do the things you got to do. And, yeah, we've kind of been around the world.
Yeah. South Florida's always been special to you and your teams, hasn't it?
It has. It goes back to my days when I coached at Auburn years ago, LSU years ago, and, of course, Florida State. We had tons of them. And some of the best. It's like Texas has tremendous high school football. Florida has great high school football. And South Florida's always been an unbelievable group of players and things down there, and had great success with those guys and have tremendous relationships with people and the coaches and the guys, just in the city in general, and had great players, and it was a great time being through there.
And that's why you take advantage of going to an Orange Bowl. Correct?
Oh, yeah.
Because you get to go back down there.
Going down there and going back down there. And we have guys on our team right now from Miami who are doing a great job for us. So, listen, you get players everywhere.
Yeah, that's the truth, right? If you're good enough, you will find them, or they will be discovered,
you got to go dig them out.
Jimbo, I kind of joked with you, but in a way, when you were at Florida State, you had Clemson in the ACC as well as other ACC schools. But playing Florida and Miami, we focus so much on the Texas rivalry being gone. You had those three rivals every year, didn't you?
And the Florida and Miami by far were the biggest two. Clemson and us were determining who was winning the ACC at that time, but the Florida rivalry and the Miami rivalry were huge rivalries for Florida State, and they were very important to win and play well in those games. We were lucky enough to be successful, and they had some great teams. We had some great. I mean, that was great battles. You think of those games and what they meant for the history of college football at one time. It's amazing.
Ian wants to know: is there an under-recruited part of the country?
Maybe there used to be. Not now. I mean, with social media and the internet and every other thing, but there are still areas that small towns, small areas where it's hard accessibility as far as airplane trips, like public airports, or that you'd have to drive 2, 3, 4 hours, that you can still go flip up rocks and find places. In the southeast for us, I always thought that was South Georgia. I mean, because we know there was a lot of space between, so you had to spend time. It was a half hour, 40-minute drive between schools. At times you could go flip rocks up. I always thought Louisiana at times had areas like that. Mississippi did. Alabama, you had more accessibility in those areas. I think Texas does at times. I mean, some of these smaller towns, and you get into East Texas and you get into West Texas, different places. You can, not around Dallas or Houston or right here, in a suburb, that you can go flip rocks up and get to those cities and find players and all over. And we find them here all the time in those areas. And of course, all other states, but those are the ones that jump out at me.
Do you find there are different attributes, like West Texas kids, East Texas kids?
Everybody has a trait or something you do, but listen, good players all have one similar trait. They love ball and they're very tough and they play real good.
Before I left Florida and moved to San Antonio, I did a couple of football games with Jimmy Cefalo, and I always talked about his Penn State days. And he talked about, because he was from the coal country, Northeast Pennsylvania, that Scranton Wilkes-Barre area. And he said when Joe Paterno would walk in, you had a lot of mothers and fathers. That door was wide open. And it was, Jimmy said that was special.
That's when I was growing up. That's when I was in West Virginia growing up. Pennsylvania and Ohio at that time had as good a football, because that's where all your coal country, that's steel workers, that your population of those cities. You go back and look in the history of Pennsylvania, Ohio, that whole Northeast region. That's where tons of jobs were. And the South wasn't as developed with the big cities, and the cities weren't as big at that time. And Florida, it coincided when Coach Bowden went down there with air conditioning. You think of the South. Now, Texas always had great football. Texas always had great football. It was one of the southern cities that did, and other things, but it wasn't as many people. Texas had tons of people. But I'm talking about the southeast part of the country, and the northeast had tons of people. That's where the majority of your people were. The majority of your jobs and all that was. And right, Joe and those Penn State teams back in that day. And, I remember that growing up.
And remember how big that Pennsylvania-Ohio All-Star game used to be when
Big 33.
The Big 33.
Yep.
They would play. That was something. But then you said when you were in the SEC as a coach and as a coordinator, you've always talked about recruiting the South then, right?
Oh, yeah. There's football in the South is just different. And it's from Texas, and you go east. I mean, football, it's a way of life. It's a daily ritual in what you think and do. And a lot of people, those towns, I mean, like I say, robbed a bank on Friday night. Everybody's at the high school football game. All them small towns, if you go look, 90% of your people is at that game watching you, supporting your team, doing the things you go do, and just it was a way of life and the things that happened, and of course it carried into universities of those states and all the things that go on. And that's what makes the southeastern part of this country so special when you're playing football.
And before we had everything on our phones for directions, you just looked for the lights, right? Because that's where you knew where the high school stadium was?
All those small towns, even when I go in recruiting, certain towns you didn't get to. I mean, you could go in and, where's that? Just pull over and just find the lights, or bright. You might not even see them. You could just see some lights, something beaming. You head that direction, you'd usually be in the right way.
He is Jimbo Fisher. This is the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show. It is presented by Capital Farm Credit. We will step aside. Come on back to Rudy's, 504 Harvey Road here in College Station. This is Aggie football from Learfield. Howdy, Aggs. Andrew Monaco here, inviting y'all to visit Costa Vida Fresh Mexican Grill. Baja-style Mexican, made from scratch daily, serving breakfast, tacos, lunch, and dinner. Aggie-owned and operated in South College Station. We continue with the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show. It's presented by Capital Farm Credit. The Aggies take on Miami on Saturday, Kyle Field, 8 o'clock, 8:10 kick, as the Hurricanes come in 2-0, beating Bethune-Cookman and Southern Miss. Maybe one of the bigger stories in college football is they brought Mario Cristobal home, right? That was a big hire for them in the offseason. I
don't know him really personally that well, but I know him, and he's done a great job coaching him where he's always been, and getting to go back to his alma mater and coach.
He said something, I was talking with some of the Miami folks this week. He said something earlier in the season that reminded me of you. Someone said, is Miami back? We've heard that, right? Miami is back. And Mario said, Miami is back to work. Miami is back to work.
You're always
right?
back.
It's the only way you get back, right?
You're never back. You're never back. And what I mean by that, as soon as you think you're back, you stop. Good enough is never good enough, and you got to understand that. You're back when you do it each and every day, and you got to have a chip on your shoulder every day to do it.
You talked about that on Monday. I'm paraphrasing. There is that natural ability to exhale and relax. Correct? When you do something well, where you want, as you talk about the stacking, it's not just in game. You stack in your preparation as well, don't you?
We do, but guys, like you say, you can have failure, but you can also have what I call relief syndrome. People, you start having success, you start doing things. It's like human nature. Human nature is not to strain and be great. That it's a learned behavior and a thing that's innate with certain people and certain groups of things and what you do, because it's hard. Human nature is to, as I always say, take the easy way out. In other words, I make an A on a test, I make another A. I can relax on this. If I make a C, I still got a B. You know what I'm saying? That's what most, and you can't think that way. You know what I'm saying? It's just as dangerous as the other part of it. So you got to go to work every day. So
Philip got his homework done and has a question for you. How do you get your team mentally ready then for Saturday?
Well, you show them that you don't. Your mental part of it comes, you have to get them ready to understand what they're trying to do. You have to prepare them to have the answers to the test. I think that's when you feel good about yourself and what you do, and you can't let one, like I say, you can't dwell on the past, you can't worry about those things, but you also have to educate. Why did this happen? Was it possible? Was it the call? Was it the execution? Why did this play fail or succeed? And people to understand it and communicate with them and understand communicate with what you're trying to get out of them, what they need to do, what you need to do, and also ask them, well, how can I help you? I call players in all the time, and I did it my whole life. They'll think you're in trouble. Say, all right, how can I help you play better? Look at you. What do you mean you coach? Well, sometimes, or how I'm coaching you, is there something else I can do? Is there something else I can help you? Is there certain things I can say? And you learn from each other. You're in this together, and you have to do that. And that's part of it. Put them in knowing that they're prepared to go do what they have to do. Then they got to go do it.
Do you take I'm trying to think of the right word. You take the part where they might be afraid to ask you, how do I get better? Do you kind of bridge that gap with them?
Yeah, you have to open the lines of communication. Mm-hmm. You do. And like I say, you have a presence, you're intimidating, you're on guys, you push guys, but you got to understand that door is always open. They can be able to talk and communicate, and you got to say that. And you can sense it in the guy's eyes. You can see it in his face. All right, tell me. No, it's okay. It's and that's part of, pushing, challenging, learning. It's like your own kids. Do your own kids, people say, why can't a player tell you that? Do your kids tell you everything? Huh? Your kids tell you sometimes you're the last one to know. Because they don't want the parents to know. They don't want the person who's teaching them, who they think they should. Well, I should know this, so I don't want to let him know I don't know this. You know what I'm saying? So let me ask somebody else to find out what I know and how to do it. And players are no different than your own kids.
Yeah.
It's like raising your own kids. It really is. In the same regard, people say, well, how can that happen? How can you not know? How do you think people don't know about your own kids? They try to keep things from you that they don't want to disappoint you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In that same regard. So it's that you can push those, and as you're talking, you can look in a guy's eyes, and I always say this, and you have a conversation, we're having a conversation, and I say something, and I can say, I understand you kind of on the same page with me, or you have no clue. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The same way when you're coaching. You got that? No, all right, let's start back. Yeah. And then you go and get them to open up.
But do they sometimes, when you deal with them, not want to be wrong?
No doubt.
Right.
Because, listen, they're fighting to go play. They don't want you to not know as a coach that there's something they may have to ask. But at the same time, when you get to that relationship and it gets to the point and they mature and understand, hey, explain it to me. Because if I don't know, I ain't going to get the job. I'm not going to play that well. You know what I'm saying? That's all part of – that's been coaching 101 since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Whenever you started coaching, there's no different.
Do you find after that first question there's no longer that risk any longer?
Yes, they learn to open up and they learn to trust and they learn to see you in a different light. You know what I'm saying? And that's your job as a coach too. You got to put yourself in a different light.
Yeah. And do you sometimes battle that they may have had a coach in the past who may belittle them for asking a question?
Yes. Different. Everybody's shaped by your past experiences and what happens and what goes on.
What are coaches doing to prep the team? Tim has asked on Facebook.
Well, the same thing we do each and every week in our game plan, our preparation, our explaining what we do, and breaking down the segments of each, compartmentalizing the game, and then specifically each segment of the game, whether it's third down, red zone, tight zone, 1st and 10, this kicking, special teams, kickoff, breaking them down and giving them great details of what their assignments are and the things we have to do and try to be as detailed as we humanly can be.
What really gladdens me is you not only have Elijah Robinson and Terry Price with those D linemen, but I know McKinley Jackson hasn't been able to play, but he's working on technique with some of his teammates. They're doing a drill, and then over on the side, and McKinley's trying to get them better.
Those guys are out, and there's a lot of great leadership, and those guys are helping. Listen, they're all bought in, they're doing and helping, and they want to make everybody have success.
Over the course of the season, now we're in week number 3, you're going to start getting some of the injured players back, aren't you?
Yeah, hopefully. Some of those guys get injured. I mean, that are getting healthy and getting back in there and get them to play, which is huge.
And then the reps in practice become.
Yeah, then you get better as a team, and the depth builds and the whole thing.
Because you never want them to be unprepared physically that way, right?
No, you have to be. I mean, you say, well, he's back. Well, you got to get him in condition. They get in practice shape, and and just because you're back, if you haven't practiced for a while, you got to play well. You still got to get back to play well.
But that's nice because you can see some of that enthusiasm when they're on the field and how that kind of goes through the entire team.
It does.
That's
they got fresh legs.
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
Other guys are wore out. They haven't practiced for a week or two. They got fresh legs.
He is Jimbo Fisher. This is the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show. It's presented by Capital Farm Credit. Come on back. This is Aggie football from Learfield. Texas Farm Bureau Insurance wants to provide a trip for 12 to the Auburn game on November 12th. To register for the 12th fan trip, visit 12thman.com/12thfan. Texas Farm Bureau Insurance is a proud corporate partner of Texas A&M Athletics. We are at Rudy's, 504 Harvey Road here in College Station, and it is the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show presented by Capital Farm Credit. With Miami coming in on Saturday, the Hurricanes 2-0, and once again, looking at that roster, let's see, Jimbo, on that offensive line, fifth-year redshirt junior, fourth-year another team with some experience.
They got 3 guys with 32 or more starts in that group, and it's a very experienced group offensively and defensively up front.
And Tyler Van Dyke is a quarterback who can sling it, almost like a Dan Marino type is how it's been. Now, those are big words. I understand what I just said. I'm talking about his size.
Yeah, I haven't seen him. I mean, now that's saying it's a big word, but he's a heck of a player now. I know that. He's got some great numbers, and film is very impressive.
Yeah, and Henry Parrish is one of their running backs who played at Ole Miss, so he knows all about SEC country, doesn't he?
And done it, and they're doing a real good job for him.
And on their defense, same thing up front. I believe I've been told that Akeem Messidor will probably be back. He did not play against Southern Miss, but that's a kid who transferred from West Virginia. They've got a transfer from USC, UAB. More guys, 5th and 6th-year guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I say, a lot of those transfers, and like I say, you can change your team quickly. I believe they had 11 or 12, if I'm not mistaken, they had come in the offseason transfer.
I was talking with them because my time in Florida, I remember when Howard Schnellenberger was there and he drew that circle around South Florida. He called that the state of Miami. Yeah. And he did not want anybody to leave. And now Mario's trying to keep all those guys in.
Up to Interstate 4, and that's where it went, and come all the way down. And right there above Orlando and Apopka and all that, and worked all the way down. And they tried to keep those guys, and it was large. That's where those big battles came. A lot of their nucleus, their teams back then came from there.
Yeah, it's always been a speed area, hasn't it, South Florida?
It has been. Great athletes and hard-nosed kids, good players, and it's just always been great high school football. And you look at the NFL, I mean, it's extremely productive guys there too.
And then you look at that roster, and they've got the Blades, right?
But they go from everywhere. I mean, and South Florida kids go everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, not just Miami. There's a lot of them there. But they went everywhere, all over. Getting the Blades, that's third generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been that recognizable school, that's for sure. Yep. Which makes these, and in September, I want to ask you this now as a fan, not as a coach, because you've got to prepare for them. But as a fan, these are fun games, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're playing great people. And as a coach, you want to play great people. There's a great team, great history, great tradition, great players. And that's what you play the game for. It's what you coach the game for.
With Mario there, are they doing anything different that he's trying to implement?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they're doing his styles. I mean, he's been there 2 games, and I haven't coached against Mario before. But, I mean, Mario, I'm sure, will be very similar to the systems he grew up in back when he played with Jimmy and Dennis back in the day. And then I'm sure he'll, his beliefs. But he's been with other people. He's coached with Coach Saban. He's coached with different people across the board. And you learn from everybody.
And staff as well. Can you get clues from the tendencies of who is Kevin Steele is there, Charlie Strong?
Well, yeah, you get, and guys always change all the time, but you get, guys at what their base is, you know what I'm saying? But they all change, and they're all great coach. Kevin's a tremendous coordinator, and Charlie's been around a long time, so they got a heck of a staff.
One of the other questions that came, Scott wants to know, can you incorporate the tight ends like we've done in the past?
Yeah, those guys are starting to really emerge and grow, and you saw the first play last week. We got one of them in there and got it going and just didn't get enough play. Had some other opportunities we could have, but, had to get those situations going. We got to get more plays and convert our third downs and better on first down, not get behind the 8 ball, but those guys are coming.
Is every spot up for grabs, Jimbo?
Every week. And I joke about
where
that.
I was going.
We're guys who guys play the best, and they all fight for time, and they all have time. You're constantly, somebody made a big deal out of repping all my quarterbacks, but I do every week. I rep them, and I mix them, and give them different things in which we're doing. So, at all positions, you're certain guys you mix and match in different personnel groups and stuff. You have said this, that whoever is number 2 is one play away. So 2 has to practice with the ones, right? They've got to know his voice. The same thing, and the same thing that happens, and you're one play from being the guy. Which even the 3s, right? As we saw last year, you almost needed. Yeah, you're 2 plays. 2 plays, you think about it, that's not many plays. Yeah. No, it's really not, right? It's what was it? Haynes' second drive in Colorado, right? And
exactly right.
That was it for that. All right. Now.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to bring that up at all. With these matchups, Jimbo, and again, people get caught looking. It's like, oh well, okay. So you start with Sam, you go to App State, you go to Miami, and then the SEC. And I understand all that, but it still comes down to this opponent, right? You can say all you want to do against Miami, but it's the only one that matters, and it's the only one in practice. You say you look forward to guys. You don't do that. You don't look past people. You live in the moment, be where your feet are. I asked you the same thing against Sam Houston, and I say against Miami, whether they're 13th ranked or not. It's all about the Aggies. Yeah, it always is. You can control what you can control, and that's how you play and how you prepare. And if you can't control yourself, you can't worry about your opponent. Right. And you got to control the things you can control. That is that big message, right? I said it before in this hour. Whether you're successful or not successful, it's that simple. You got to have your mindset, your attitude, your demeanor, your preparation, and all the intangibles that allow you to create the habits that allow you to have success. And then when you talk about the stacking, and this is what has happened on let's talk about the Orange Bowl team or any of those teams. When that defense comes off the field after doing something, the offense is jazzed and says, okay, now it's our turn. And then the offense comes off after scoring, and the defense says, you know what, they're not going to score. Once you start seeing that, that's when you start grinning, correct? Yeah, you do, and you feed off each other, and you go. And that's part of being on the team. That's part of the responsibility you take. I said first ability is availability, next ability is accountability and dependability. And to each other and to you, not just your guy beside you, your offense, your defense, defense, the whole ball of wax. We've talked about this. The most important person to trust is yourself, right? You have to. If you can't trust him, it's hard to trust anybody else. He is Jimbo Fisher, and this is the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show presented by Capital Farm Credit. We have one more segment to come from Rudy's 504 Harvey Road here in College Station. So glad you're with us. Come on back. This is Aggie Football from Learfield. Texas A&M Athletics has launched the free 12th Man Rewards program that thanks fans 13 and older for standing with the 12th man to create a home field advantage for our student athletes and coaches. You can download or log in to the 12th Man mobile app and create your 12th Man Rewards profile today. Attend events, get points, redeem rewards. For details, visit 12thmanrewards.com. And yes, you can get rewards for coming to the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show, presented by Capital Farm Credit. Usually getting something signed. Yes. Have you noticed the tendency that they usually send up the youngster or a kid to start the process going, and then everybody – it's like we're talking about the questions. No, they're getting pretty comfortable now. Everybody seems to be coming from the beginning. Absolutely. Question from Shane. 3 main keys to winning this week are? I think you're going to take care of the football, which it always is. You got to be able to create big plays, stop big plays, and you got to be able to get turnovers and what you're trying to do. And I think the physicalities in the front, the offense, defense, the front, we're going to have to do that and play with great efficiency at quarterback, and like we always do. That position always is, but your offensive, defensive lines have to be very efficient to allow both sides to go. You got to be able to win the turnover battle, and you got to be able to create big plays. You got to be able to stop big plays. You mentioned Monday that then you get into third down and red zone. Yeah. But third down is usually, as you have reminded us, first and second. Most of the time, yes. You want to be in third and short if you can, that kind of efficiency. You talked about sometimes physicality is part of technique as well, correct? You mentioned that on Monday. You and how to be physical, you have to have great technique to be physical. You can say I'm tough, but if you're not at right pad level, right hand placement, right hat placement, right step, if you're not in position to play with leverage, it's hard to be physical. You know what I'm saying? So you have to be technical before you can be physical. And when it comes to turnovers, Jimbo, it has to be through a team concept, correct? You can't be going out there flying solo trying to make something happen. You can't leave the other 10 in a lurch. You can't cheat the game. Mm-hmm. This game rewards consistency. Like I said, doing ordinary things and putting a bunch of average plays together, and the subtotal of that is outstanding.
And that's what people don't understand. It's making people earn things each and every play and do things each and every play. And to say, I'm going to go catch a touchdown, I'm going to throw a touchdown, I'm going to go do whatever, I'm going to go make a tackle, I'm going to go make an interception, I'm going to go cause a fumble. That's a great thought, but how you do it is the key. The fundamentals you got to do it with. And as soon as you do, the game will bite you if you keep trying to make all those plays.
We talk so much about in baseball, the worst fielder, the ball will find you.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You sit there.
In football, right? It's like you say, 10 out of 11, but in the game of football, it's that one that's
football is
just
the ultimate team game.
Mm-hmm.
You can have 10 guys right, one guy wrong, and that's what happened with us the other day in a lot of situations, and in a lot of scenarios. But you got to have them all together, and sometimes you have guys overcome that, and you can get by with it, but consistently it'll end up getting you. It's how many plays in a row can everyone execute, and that's the key.
Yeah, that's again, that's part of that stacking
exactly
that you
right.
always talk about.
Exactly right.
Right. So Miami on Saturday, 8 o'clock. You had 11, 2:30, now 8 o'clock. I know my partner hates late games, and he does that from a player. He wanted to always go play.
Yeah, exactly. You want to get up, you want to get going, middle of the day, get it going, and get it over with him. And then the next day, you can get into your next opponent and all the things that go on. But those night games and the atmosphere and environment, Kyle Field will be tremendous.
That's the one. That's what I was thinking about. Right, at 8 o'clock, they're going to have.
There'll be a great
can't
environment
wait.
like it always is.
Yeah, that's the beauty of all of that. So we're going to get at it on Saturday. All the best to you. Someone came up to you and said, "How you doing?" You had that smile on your face again because this is the kind of practice that you've wanted to see this week.
Yeah, you do, and that's this business. You got to each and every week. You got to go and be ready to roll.
We keep thinking at times as fans, right, that overreaction. Well, they're going to play the same way on Saturday. If you see that, then that spells something else.
But it depends on how you play. I would say if you expect to do something, you can't keep doing the same thing, expect to get a different result. And that's why your practices and the things that go on. That's where you can judge that part of it.
Yeah, that's.
But you still got to take it to the game field.
That's the ultimate, right? You always talk about knowing all the answers to the test, and the test is easy.
Exactly.
That's the ultimate test.
But then able to take it, they're able to relax and execute it. That's the other part of it.
Jimbo, is there also something to this is now for the young players? This is now one more piece of information. Last Saturday was one more piece of information
you learn
for them.
from it and you grow, and you learn to get in those environments better, and you learn to play better.
As always, thank you for this hour. Beat the hell out of Miami.
Thank you very much.
You
Great
bet.
to be with you.
He is Jimbo Fisher, and this is the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show. We will come to you on Saturday. We'll get started at 7 o'clock with our St. Joseph Health pregame show. We will hear from Anais Smith during that pregame show, and we'll also hear from head coach Jimbo Fisher from our talk this week. And you also hear from players Layden Robinson, Damani Richardson, and Anais Smith in their own words. And then at 8:10, we will kick things off between the 22nd ranked Fighting Texas Aggies and the 13th ranked Miami Hurricanes. My thanks to Dylan Riggs, who is the producer of the Jimbo Fisher Radio Show. Kevin Menchow for Coach. I'm Andrew. This is Aggie Football from Learfield. Thanks and gig 'em.